Hello, Fanfest. Whoop, there you go, this one. How are you guys doing today? What did y'all think of the Valkyrie gameplay? Would you like to see it again? Then go to YouTube, because I can't do that. I've just got my own presentation, sorry. It is on YouTube, though, so if you're watching on the stream, you can watch both at the same time, or if I get boring or something like that, that's all. I won't be offended. I'm here to talk a bit about sovereignty. This is a presentation about a whole area of the game that we just released a lot of big proposed changes to just earlier this month. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what this presentation is all about. So one of the things we're going to be doing here is doing a quick look back on some of the previous SOV systems changes over the years, the way SOV has developed as a system in EVE. A refresher on what exactly we proposed for summer 2015, for any of you that haven't read the Mammoth blog or maybe fell asleep partway through it. One thing is, this is basically too early for ground-shaking big changes. We are definitely in a feedback phase for the dev blog. In previous Fanfest, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, this is the kind of thing, this whole dev blog, the announcement of the soft changes, that CCP might have saved until Fanfest to get a bigger boom, a bigger exposure for it, to get that moment. But nowadays, we're prioritizing getting more feedback time from you over the big splash. So really, this Fanfest, when it comes to SOV, is about listening and collecting feedback, more so than about announcing things, because we did the big announcements a couple weeks ago, and we're working on refining them thanks to your feedback right now. So there'll be more announcements, of course, down the road. We do have 3 notable new announcements in this presentation, but they actually all cover things that we plan to do before the June release that we aim to have this soft revamp in. So the 3 things we'll be talking about that are new to you guys will all be things that are coming a little bit earlier, actually. And we want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions, because I know there's going to be a whole lot of them. So we're going to have mics set up on either side at the end of this presentation for you guys to ask questions. And if you don't get a chance to, if we don't have enough time, don't worry, because we have a lot of roundtables. We have 2 separate roundtables on this issue. We have the game design panel, lots and lots of places you can pull us all aside at the pub crawl, lots and lots of ways to ask questions. So I'm going to next kind of go into introducing you guys a bit to the team that's been working on all of this SOV stuff in Nullsec over the past year. One of the things we talked about at last FanFest was the Nullsec working group. This is a team of people pretty heavily weighted towards game design, but we've got a couple of engineers on it as well, that came together to work on Nullsec as a whole, to look at the issues that Nullsec faces, to look at the kind of solutions that we can be working on. This is the team that has been kind of meeting over the last year. And when we moved into actually releasing, getting ready to deploy, to actually design and implement changes to sovereignty capture mechanics themselves, the responsibility moved over to one of our Scrum teams. So this is Team 5.0. This is the team that is actually working on the summer 2015 proposal, that's working on all the coding, all the QA, all the design for it, and that's going to be responsible for shipping it. So these wonderful people are all people that you can pull aside and talk about SOV with. We're all very eager to hear your feedback. I think a lot of us are in this room, and we'll be at a lot of the, there you go. We'll be at a lot of the roundtables as well. And for those roundtables, just to let you guys know where exactly to go, we have 2 of them. This is something that we do with roundtables that we know are going to get huge attendance, because we can only fit about 60 people in the rooms for them. Putting them in a bigger room, it isn't really a roundtable anymore, so we wanted to keep them in essentially the largest roundtable rooms we have. So there's going to be one today at 3 o'clock in roundtable room 3, which is Amar. It's over that way. We're also going to do one tomorrow at 11, so for people who didn't get too drunk tonight, can make it at 11, and that's going to be roundtable room 4. We do ask, try not to have everybody go to both of them. We want to have the 2 of them so that more people can actually attend. So if you've been to one or you plan to go to the other, try to give some priority to the people who can only make it to one or the other of them, please. It's not going to be announcements in those. They're going to be about talking to you guys, about getting feedback, about asking questions. So they'll probably cover a lot of the same stuff between the 2 of them. So now I'm going to look back a little bit at some of the solve changes, some of the solve systems that have happened in Eve. I know there's some people that got confused by the title of this. Some people have been referring already to the summer 2015 proposal as Solve 3.0, but the title here calls it Solve 5. Both are very valid, I think, ways of looking at it, but I'm going to explain the 1 through 4 and the way we define the different solve systems that have existed over the years in Eve. We're going to look quickly at how those were developed. And we're going to focus more on the systems themselves, not as much on these stories of the alliances and the drama and the backstabbing, which are all great stories. But for those, I highly recommend you check out this upcoming book from Andrew Groen, who is making a book on the history of the great empires of EVE Online. And he has a presentation today in the Serenity big presentation hall, where a lot of the player and guest presentations are, today at 3 o'clock. Definitely go check those out. I jumped in on kickstarting this book really early because I'm super excited about it. Unfortunately, I'm going to be busy during that presentation, but I'm definitely going to watch the replay of it. So this is what we define as Sovereignty 1.0. And in a lot of ways, it's actually pre-Sov, sovereignty like beta, because this is before formal Sov was introduced. The period from 2003, from when Eve released, to 2004. It was a period of time where there wasn't actually the formal mechanic for claiming space. The server didn't know when you claim space. But I think it's very important to note that players did still claim space. That really sovereignty is something that we're actually more trying to measure with the system than trying to create. This isn't a system that CCP brings to players and says, here, have sovereignty. This is a system that emerges from a game like Eve naturally from all the different things you guys do. You live in the space, you kill all the people around you that you don't like, you make friends with the people that you do like, you declare your sovereignty over an area and people can challenge you for it. And this is something that has existed even before we had a formal mechanic for it. One of the big challenges whenever we look at making sovereignty capture mechanics changes is finding a way to have the system as accurately as possible reflect the kind of the natural way that people would take space, that they'd hold space. And of course, the server needs to know who has it, so you can do things like upgrade it and all that. But this, in a lot of ways, is something that we need to make sure we don't forget. That Sov, at its core, is something that you guys bring to the game. It's not something that we design and hand to you. When we did finally, when CCP did, this is well before I came here, finally did create a system of formally collecting Sov in 2004, it was based on the star-based system. So this is a system that a lot of you old-timers will remember well, grinding through star bases. Star bases you'd be able to check to see whether they would claim Sov or not in the system for your alliance. It, for the first time, allowed stable station ownership in Nullsec. Before, it was pretty easy to flip them back and forth. And this is a system that was pretty robust. It did work for a couple of years pretty solidly. Had some big downsides, of course. It was, in a lot of ways, very confusing. There were a lot of very hidden mechanics that people were able to take advantage of. I've heard some great stories just in the last couple of days about how people managed to use their opponents' lack of knowledge about the way that the Sov claiming ticked and the way that it carried over to sneak in and ninja systems away from each other. I think there's going to be actually some more great stories about some of those wars during this period in the presentation that Andrew is going to be doing later today. But this system, I think, was a big watershed moment for Eve in that we allowed people to formally declare Sov, the server to actually track who has Sov in an area, and this is what was then built upon with the next iteration. So what we call Sovereignty 3, this is 2007 and 2009, and this was a big update on the star-based Sov system. It's kind of, I think, easy to lump 2 and 3 together from this far away from it, but it really was a ground-shaking change. This introduced upgradable sovereignty levels. For the first time, you would have sovereignty actually that could be upgraded over time, and Constellation capital systems. It was very heavily weighted towards the defender. That was one of the big, in hindsight, mistakes that was made, was how secure. In this system, the Constellation capital was actually invulnerable. None of your star bases could be attacked, so you could just cover every moon with a CSA and pump out supercaps, and people would have to take the whole constellation from you. One of the things we really liked about the system, though, that we ended up losing in the system that came after it, is the fact that it made constellations and the geography around systems matter a lot more. You could decide if you wanted to try to build in a defensible constellation. The geography of the way the systems were laid out mattered a lot, and that's something that we are going to try to be bringing into the new system as well. And this is the one that I think most of you, if you're in this room, are probably pretty familiar with. Sovereignty 4, Dominion Sov. One of the first things you'll notice about it, and probably of all the many problems with this system, this is the biggest one. That 2009 to 2015, that is a very, very long time for a single system to be kind of continued in its core, in the same core way in Eve too long. Any system like this is one of the big lessons of Dominion Sov. Any system we build in sovereignty needs to be iterated on often. And the fact that this system wasn't able to be over this time period until now is definitely one of its biggest failures. It did decouple Sov from starbases. It introduced the iHubs, the TCUs, the SBUs, the structures that you're all familiar with. Introduced economic upgrades for sovereignty, the ability to have respawning anomalies, to have respawning asteroid belts. These kind of bonuses, some other ones that aren't really used as much, like extra wormhole connections that are kind of sporadic and that nobody really touches. But that was a pretty big step forward, and that's something that induced a lot of people to move to Nullsec that hadn't before, but unfortunately replaced one structure grind with another. And this is something that we are really trying to learn from as we move forward. So talking a little bit about what we've been doing over the last year, we mentioned in the dev blog for these changes, and in the dev blog that came out last year in October, the Phoebe release represented phase 1 of, I'm hearing some claps, probably some boos, but some claps too, yeah? Yeah. Introduced a very big change to the way people move around for long distances in Eve, jump fatigue. The goals, at its core, was less dogpiling. We wanted to create a system where you could get into a capital engagement without people jumping from across the map and landing on you out of nowhere, and more regionalism, having your actual location within the map matter more. If people have to go through more effort to stretch from one end of the empire to the other. I know some of you in the CFC may have done a lot of traveling this week, and you may not be super happy about it, but this is the kind of system, making traveling matter like that, I think, is something that's very valuable to Nullsec. It does make geography matter a lot more than it did before. Overall, we talked a little bit about the results of this in a dev blog. Our view of this so far is that it's a positive start, but it's only a start. This is not a fix-all to Nullsec. It's something that we need to build upon, and we are going to be building upon that this summer. So, talking a bit about what is coming this summer. Our plan is to release the next big iteration on Sov. We're currently focused primarily on the capture mechanics. This is an area that hasn't been touched since Dominion, the way you actually fight over a system. And it's the area that we decided was in the most need of help. There's a lot of things in Nullsec that need more improvement. There's a lot of things that we have been improving over the years that still need more. But capture mechanics we viewed as the #1 priority to hit right now, and that's why we're touching that this summer. We released a blog on it, a very gigantic blog on March 3rd. Currently, this plan is to release a set of changes in June of 2015. Of course, with our release cadence, there may be elements of this that can get moved up. There may be elements that get pushed back. We are going to be releasing this when it's done. And so the June date is, again, this far out, still a target date rather than a commitment, but it is something that we are aiming at. So you guys know that is the plan for when to release it. And we are still at a very early point for this. We want to make sure we work with all of you to get the best possible plan. It's not too often that we announce a set of changes, a proposal this early, this far before the release. But in this case, we wanted to take advantage of all the feedback that all of you can provide. Because we know we have a ton of very passionate players when it comes to Nullsec and Sov. And you guys are not going to let us make changes you don't like without letting us know. You're going to help us refine these changes. You're going to help us get a good set of changes, the best possible set of changes in the end. And we are going to be listening to you. We do intend to incorporate as much of this feedback as possible. I'm going to go quickly over some of the The actual system itself, a lot of this is what was covered in the blog as well, but spread throughout it is going to be a couple of these new announcements, so don't fall asleep too deeply. But I want to make sure we're covering all this so that everyone has a refresher. The goals of this are very important, I think, because in a lot of ways at this early stage, the goals are as important to know as the actual proposal, because the proposal may change. There's going to be a lot of things we probably will change about the proposal to reach the goals better, but knowing where we're heading is going to help us navigate there. So we want to make sure that the system is engaging for everyone, including line members. Previous systems have done an okay job of focusing on alliance leaders, making the kind of grand strategic gameplay interesting, but we want to create a system that is more fun for everyone involved, from the bottom all the way to the top. We want a system that's clear and more understandable. There was a pretty great post on Reddit just today from Elise Randolph talking to some of the Brave guys about what's going on in GE and how weirdly convoluted Dominion Sov can get when people shoot things out of order. That is exactly the kind of thing that we want to avoid with this system. We want a system that acts much more predictably, where people can understand the system a lot better. It is still going to be complicated. Any system like this is going to have a certain amount of complexity to it. But Dominion Sov has a lot of edge cases, as the current state of GE shows, and we want to be avoiding that with a new system. We want to lessen the requirement to bring huge fleets every time. One of the things that we want to make sure we're very clear of this is we don't intend to arbitrarily enforce what type of fleet sizes people bring. We don't want to be limiting the number of people that can get into a system other than the very highest cap that our servers can handle. We also don't want to be forcing people to be bringing large fleets to attack an undefended objective, which is what the HP-based objectives in Dominion Sov do. Essentially, even if you don't have anyone fighting you, you still need to bring a lot of people. You still need to bring big ships just so you can burn down the HP in enough time. Siege fleet is less than fun. And we want to make sure that this is a system where you bring the number of people and the ship types and the type of fleet composition that you need to defeat your enemy, that's the goal. And then once you defeat your enemy, the system should actually flip pretty naturally from there, ideally. As close to that as possible is the goal. We want to speed up the capture of fallow space. We want to make it sure that putting buffer regions of completely uninhabited space is no longer an effective way to defend yourself, both because that is using boredom as a weapon, and we want that to be as ineffective as possible. People always find a way, but we want to continue to reduce the effectiveness of that tactic, but also because that kind of empty space as a buffer zone is one of the things that makes it harder for smaller groups, for newer groups, to establish themselves in Nullsec. If the areas of space that are less attractive are being used as defensive buffers, then there isn't the space for groups that maybe can't take the most attractive space yet to move in and start taking it. So we want to make sure that space is, sure, you're going to have neighbors that were going to come and kill you, they're going to come and fight you, but those neighbors shouldn't have a strategic necessity to keep that space under their own flag. And we want to make sure active space is easier to defend than AFK empires. This is where the occupancy bonuses come in. We want to reward people for being active in their space beyond just the ISK you make from it. Strategically, you should be rewarded as well. And that's something that I think is a very well-established goal in the community. There's been discussions on this kind of thing for quite a long time now, and we definitely agree that it's a very valuable goal to put in there. We also want to spread out the largest battles, make sure that the server can more easily handle these gigantic fleets that come together by putting them across different systems, giving people reasons to not just all dogpile in one location, but to split up their fleet, to potentially have mobile fleets, to get more FCs involved, more different fleet sizes involved, and generally create a more dynamic battlefield. And we think that's going to have a lot of benefits. We have a team that's working really hard and doing great things on improving the performance of EVE. We've made a lot of great strides in improving the performance in large fleet battles, but we can't solve it with technical tools alone. We need to also be using game design to encourage people to spread out. And iteration is absolutely vitally important. This is something I know we mentioned it in the dev blog, and some people have been skeptical, and I can definitely I can understand why. This is something that was said when Dominion was released as well, that was one of the goals. I've talked to some of the people that were involved with that system, and it is something that was a goal they were trying to reach, but it was something that they couldn't in the time frame they were given. They ended up having to build a system that wasn't very extensible, that was kind of slapped together because of the pressure that was put on them to release in a certain time frame. And this is one of the things that our new release cadence, that the New World Order that CCP Seagull has put into place, has been hugely helpful with. We have the freedom now to know that we're going to be able to code this right, to know that we're going to be able to build this in a way that can be maintained, and to know that if it's not ready, we can delay it a month. And that's something that is going to produce a better end result, we believe. And it allows us to iterate more quickly on it afterwards once we get that foundation in place. So this is the core mechanic of the new system. A little screenshot of one of the effect. You'll notice it looks very similar to some certain mysterious people or things that are flying around the EVE universe right now. It's a new module that's derived from Drifter technology. You're going to be hearing more about them and more about what their impact in EVE is going to be over the next couple of days and then over the next several months. It's used for influencing structures. The solve system is going to be one of the first things that it's used for, but it's definitely not going to be the only thing that it's used for. And in the solve system, it replaces the structure shooting. There's a lot of reasons that we don't like structure shooting. It scales with numbers in a way that forces you to have bigger fleets. It also means that we have to create a system that takes a small group of people a lot of time to complete so that we can prevent a large fleet from like one-shotting it. Having a system that's based on time rather than on hit points is a huge advantage. It was designed as close as possible when it comes down to the goal. And this is something that I think is important when we look at suggestions. You guys have provided a lot of great suggestions on how we can improve this mechanic. Thank you very much for all the people that have been posting in the thread so far. We're definitely listening. We don't have anything to announce on that yet because it's still too early. But we are going to be making changes to it based on the feedback so far. And I expect there'll be more feedback that makes us make more changes. As close as possible, the goal here is to have a system that measures who has control over the grid. We've joked before that if we could, we would have a survey pop up that says, did you win the fight? Yes, no. And if everyone could answer honestly, that would be the best solve system ever. Unfortunately, we can't quite trust you guys to answer honestly in all cases. So we need to try to build a system that, as much as possible, allows the server to measure who has control here? Who is winning the fight? Who has won the fight? And the Entosis Link is our best so far method that we've been able to come up with to determine that. It also allows us to do something that I think is pretty valuable, where structures can only be defended by their owners directly. This doesn't mean that having allies doesn't help, but it does mean that you need to actually show up to defend your own structure. That allies can help fight with you, but they can't do all the work for you. And that's something we think has a lot of benefit in getting people kind of invested in their own infrastructure. One of the big other goals here when we talked about simplicity is allowing the structures to be used independently. It simplifies it a lot. It allows alliances to choose their investment. We're moving the solve upkeep costs away from the TCU so that if you want to just put up a flag somewhere and challenge your neighbors to fight you, you can do so without having to put down that big investment. The TCU itself costs about as much as a hack. You place it down, you put up essentially a flag saying, I say that I own this space. If you disagree, come challenge me. And you can use it for that, or you can use it in your deep, safe space, however you like. But not having the upkeep tied to it allows a lot more of that freedom. Allows people to mix and match what structures they want to use, which is something that better reflects what we want to do in the future with structures in EVE, where instead of having a couple of monolithic structures, there's a lot of options for how you can build up your space, a lot of things you can do in your space. I'm not going to give too much away here because you guys need to watch the keynote today and the structure presentation on Saturday to see some of the stuff that's coming there. But what I'll just say is that having structures independently, allowing people to mix and match and build up their space with multiple structures that don't depend on each other is something that's going to become a lot more valuable as we move forward with our vision for structures. So one of the things that I am going to be announcing today is some changes that we're making because we know that this system is going to mean that iHubs die more often. That is something that we consider generally positive. It means that there's a bit less stagnation if people can kill them. At the moment, you have to go through all of these long sets of timers to destroy these. But of course, deploying them, building or buying the upgrades and shipping them out all very, very challenging, a lot of work, a lot of headache for the logistics people. So we're making a set of changes that we currently have scheduled for April, before the SOV release, where we're going to be lowering the volume of infrastructure hubs. You can tell who's deployed SOV upgrades here, who's been Titan bridging freighters around. We're going to allow infrastructure hubs and all of the military industrial upgrades to fit into a deep space transport, or an Orca, or a Titan, or a jump freighter, but you will no longer need a normal freighter for them. Strategic upgrades are still going to require at least a jump freighter, but you'll be able to do them all with a jump freighter instead of requiring a normal freighter. And as part of this, we're going to be allowing you to deploy all types of structures from fleet hangars so that deep space transports can be better used for this kind of role. One of the other problems, there we go, fleet hangars. One of the other problems with iHubs and their upgrades is that they really don't fit with our vision of everything in EVE being manufacturable by players. iHubs themselves are manufactured, but the moment upgrades have to be purchased from NPCs, they have to be shipped out from HiSec to Nullsec. We want to allow people to build them locally, to build them using materials that they've gotten from their own PI on their own planets in their own space, to get their industrialists involved. So as of April, the plan is for all iHub upgrades to be manufactured by players. And so this is a set of changes that we are planning on, like I said, putting in April. The goal is to get them out before the main SOV changes so that we can get a better situation for our industrialists, for our logistics people, before we get into all the carnage that is to come when it comes to iHubs. Another very controversial area that we've been talking about with our new proposal is time zone safety. We do truly believe that some kind of time zone system is required in a worldwide game like EVE. You shouldn't have to play EVE 24/7 to be competitive. But it's always something that's going to have trade-offs. Everything we do to increase the defense is going to hurt the kind of availability for content for attackers. And so we need to find the perfect balance, well, as close to the perfect balance as possible here. And we're going to be working with you to help do that. There's many competing needs to take into account, and so we're going to be asking you a lot of questions about this, about what your experience is, what kind of time zone systems work best for people in your time zone, if there's any examples from other systems in EVE or from other games. We want to not just get to whether people like or don't like it, we want to get to the core of why a certain system meets their needs better, so we can actually get the system into the best shape possible. And one of the things we're doing for that is we put together a survey. This QR code will take you there, especially for the people at home. And the goal is to get as much information as possible on the different time zone mechanics in EVE, on the different needs of different players and in different time zones, and find out what mechanics work best for you so we can make the best system possible. We have over 6,000 responses so far. This exact number is actually from early yesterday, so it's probably significantly higher than that now. Last I checked, the #1 country for responses was Russia. So great job to all our Russian players. We've got worldwide responses. The map on our little survey tool is very, very filled. English is at this. Yeah, it should be readable for people. But you also use the QR code to take you to the English. And Russian and German localization are at this link here. We also have a news report that we put out a couple days ago and a announcement thread at the top of the Features and Ideas forums for you to check it out there. But we really encourage everyone who cares about time zones in SOV to fill this out, to give us as much information as possible. If you answered one of the later questions in one of the earlier text boxes, you don't need to repeat yourself. I'm going to be reading through all of them, which is a after Fanfest task, not so much a before Fanfest task. So I haven't read them yet, but we're going to be diving through all of these responses, especially these long form answers, and trying to get the best feedback we can. We want to get the system into the best place possible. One of the other key things that we're working on with this system is Constellation-Wide Events to spread fights out. The idea is that when essentially when a reinforcement timer ends, instead of just shooting the structure and fighting over that in the SBUs, you instead have to fight throughout the entire constellation. It opens up a lot of new tactical opportunities, makes geography matter again, which is something we're really excited about, and allows smaller defenders to take advantage of their occupancy bonuses. All the occupancy bonuses to capture speed in the world won't help you if you can't survive on grid at all at the one location where your opponent has like dropped a wrecking ball and you can't do anything. But in a system like this, where movement matters, where both sides will likely be capturing at least some nodes, it allows people that have these bonuses from living in their space, from being active in their space, to take advantage of them. Another thing that's completely new in this system is something we're calling Freeport Mode. The reason we actually introduced this is a system that in a lot of ways picks up the lessons that were learned from World of Darkness, actually, from a area capture mechanic that they had worked on over the years in Atlanta. And one of the things that came out of that was that essentially what you guys already know, last hit is a pretty frustrating mechanic for deciding final ownership of something. It allows people to go in and ninja stuff, which is hilarious sometimes, but is not exactly the most balanced mechanic. So creating a system that allows people to both challenge someone for their structures and also then kind of more fairly decide who owns them at the end is why we ended up moving towards this mode. We think there's a lot of other benefits too. It allows a grace period for evacuation, lets people move their stuff around, which should make living in Nullsec again, a bit more attractive, you have a bit more safety. It allows third parties to be effective, and therefore the diplomacy of EVE to really show its strengths. And one of the things I want to be clear with this system is that we don't think that this will necessarily always be a part of the SOV system. This is essentially, the reason we have this for stations and not for things like iHubs and TCUs is because iHubs and TCUs we can explode. As soon as you win the fight over them, they explode, you drop your own. Stations, obviously, that is a very complicated proposal. We're not going to just let people blow up stations willy-nilly right now, but we do want to move towards an EVE where everything is destructible. And we do have some plans in place that will get us closer in that direction. For more details on that, check out the keynote and the structures presentation on Saturday. And we believe that once we get closer to that goal, we may not need this exact mechanic anymore. And that's something that will hopefully, again, you'll hear more about what we are moving towards in the future. We also, of course, have a system of occupancy, defense bonuses, gives strategic benefits from being active in your space, allows defenders to essentially survive against attackers without having buffer regions. And this, I want to be very clear, is right now our view is it's the #1 priority for iteration after release. The current system that we've got proposed for this summer release uses the existing SOV indexes, which are great in some ways, but they've got some big downsides. And one of the big downsides, of course, is that they don't measure very much. They measure NPC kills, they measure how long you've controlled the space, they measure mining volume. Having mining be the only thing that goes into an index called industrial index is a bit silly. And this is something that we definitely want to be, that we have as a very high priority for iteration on moving forward. To pull more things into that, I want to be very clear that it's not going to be, it's not easy to pull some things in, for instance, PvP kills or industry jobs, both very farmable. We have to be very careful about any mechanics that allow you to turn ISK into occupancy directly. There may be ways to incorporate those in a very limited way. Those of you who are familiar with some of the problems we had balancing factional warfare payouts will know some of the challenges there. But those we have to be very careful about. But other things like PI, things like reactions, there's a lot of potential to do some cool things there, we think, and extend these to measure more things, to more accurately measure the way you live in your space. This is an area that we know you guys have been talking a lot about, that there's been a lot of debate about the amount of ISK-making potential in Nullsec. We truly believe that SOV Nullsec should be very valuable and desirable. And we are going to be working with you guys to make sure that the benefits of living in Nullsec are worth the risk. The carrot and the stick is the way a lot of people have been describing it. And we are committed to making sure that that is true going forward. One thing I want to be clear, though, is that we do need to keep the entire game in mind. Economic balance of the whole game is a very high priority, which means that essentially not everyone's going to get everything they want. And also that different Nullsec space should have different value. We do think there's a lot of room to improve some of the less valuable Nullsec space in EVE, but we're never going to make everything exactly the same. We believe that ideally every group should have either an area of space they'd rather move to, they'd really like to kill those guys and take take their space because it's better, or if they're in the best space, everyone should be gunning for them. If people are satisfied with their space and other people aren't trying to take it from them, then we've lost a lot of what makes Nullsec great, the constant competition for resources. Now, one thing that I think you're all very familiar with is the fact that some forms of ISK making in Nullsec need more help than others. There are some that are making a lot of value, some that are much less competitive. And so we are ready to announce some changes that we are making specifically for Nullsec mining. So this is also scheduled for April. And this is a series of changes where we're incorporating a lot of great ideas actually that came from the CSM. Mina is one of our CSM members this year and last year, has made some great proposals in what we should be doing and what we can do to improve mining in Nullsec. And we're incorporating a lot of what he suggested here. What the actual changes are going to include is a complete rebuild of Nullsec ores. So after these changes, the anomalies created by ore prospecting arrays will only contain Nullsec ores, but the Nullsec ores themselves will contain all of the minerals you need to build everything you want to build in Nullsec. If you mine out the anomalies entirely, you'll get a ratio that's pretty close to what you need to build stuff. You'll be able to mix and match, like cherry picking the stuff that is most valuable just from these ores to get what you want from the combinations that you need. We did a lot to buff Nullsec mining over the past couple of years. Unfortunately, that combined with the existing system of kind of Nullsec ores and high-sec ores and relying on things like megasite and zitterine for the value in the Nullsec ores has then meant that when you guys started mining more in Nullsec, because we made the changes, it crashed the price of megasite and zitterine, and we went back a bit to square one. So the goal here is to build a system that is much more sustainable, that allows people to bring mineral composition closer to consumption, increase Nullsec self-sufficiency, allow you to build what you need to build at home. We're also going to be making some adjustments to the consumption of some minerals. I'm not going to give the details of that right here, partially because last time I did that 2 years ago and gave a lot of details, like in a dev blog or during Fanfest, the people in the room got really angry they couldn't get involved in the speculation. So we're going to wait till you all get home, and then we're going to post the details so you guys can make a bunch of money on the market. We're also going to be rebalancing the industrial and military SOV index decay rates in April, with the goal being that right now it's very difficult to keep, with mining, to keep your industrial index up high enough. So we're going to be changing them to better reflect the actual activity that's happening in Nullsec. So the decay rate for military will be a bit higher, the decay rate for industrial will be a lot lower, and you'll be able to actually maintain these with actual human levels of gameplay. So I've got a couple of pictures to show you on some of the UI that we've been working on. This is stuff that's evolved a bit from the versions that were in the dev blog. CCP Shark has been working hard on building these to make them kind of a lot more intuitive, and we're very happy with kind of where we are right now, but we definitely want more feedback because this is something that's going to evolve a lot over the next couple of months. So this image here shows one of the ways we're trying to integrate management and kind of tracking of SOV and what stuff is in danger for your alliance, what statuses your structures are at in the map, allow you to view, hey, this system is flashing because somebody is attacking one of my alliance's structures in this system. This system is red because there's one in reinforced, stuff like that, with the ability to hover over it and get all the details you want. The new map that is being put together that's in beta right now, but is getting much closer to being out of beta, it allows us to do a lot of really cool things, and we're going to try to put as much information as possible into that. We're also planning on, the low-sec SOV thing, that's just a placeholder, don't worry. We're not actually letting you take SOV in low-sec. We're also planning on displaying the information in the system map itself, so you'll be able to view the location of all the relevant SOV structures and their statuses within the system map directly. You'll be able to warp to them right from that. And this is the UI we currently have in progress for the different soft structures in the actual system info. You'll see the logo of the Alliance displayed, kind of embossed into the shape of the structures. The color will be giving you information. You'll be able to hover over it to get more information. You'll be able to use the right-click menu or the radial menu to warp to them directly from there. This also will give us the information on the solve occupancy bonuses for everyone in the system very clearly. And this is an example of what it could look like with the hover over of a structure. Shows you who owns it, shows you its status, how long it's owned, when it was last attacked. If there's other information that you guys really want to see in these kind of systems, definitely let us know. We're going to be asking for a lot of that kind of feedback as we go forward. And this is an example of what a UI might look like for someone within their own alliance looking at the alliance info of all of their structures. So this would be in the Corps and Alliances tab, and you'd be able to look at the information of all your structures. You'd be able to sort by distance from you, sort by occupancy level, sort by the stuff that's in most dire need. If you have a lot of systems under attack at once, you can assign somebody to be looking at this and directing people to the areas that need the most help. And so we want to be building a system like this that allows people to get the information they need. We also are hoping to be able to put all of this into Crest so that you'll be able to make your own out-of-game tools very easily as well for all of you guys who have big IT departments. So the third thing that we're announcing today is a bit, probably a bit less exciting than the first two, but it's pretty exciting for us. We are planning on, as part of this whole getting everybody information about the system early, getting lots of feedback, we also want to do extensive play testing of this system on CCP before release so that we can get more feedback from you guys, so that you guys can get a chance to try out the system, so we can do things like tune all the details of it as we kind of get later on in the process. We're going to be putting scenarios on CCP so that alliances can try out the new system, provide targeted feedback, and get a head start on tactics. We're going to be doing it through a competition, and the winning alliance will have their name permanently added to the description of the Entosis Link BPO. So this item will exist in the game forever, and your alliance will be listed as major contributors to the development of this new technology if you manage to win this. We are going to be starting preliminary alliance signups today. The actual trials like when we actually do the testing will be when they're ready, probably somewhere around May, but we want to get people in there to judge the interest, to get people signed up so we can decide things like where we would do it, what kind of regions. The idea is we give people some space on CCP and then assign a region or a couple of regions and say go nuts, whoever has the most space at the end wins. So at this point, to sign up, there's no commitment required. We just wanted to gauge interest, but please don't sign up if you actually don't have any interest. So the CEO of the Alliance Executor Corp in-game, if you're interested, send an email to me, CCP Fozzie, and include the information. How many players do you think your alliance can regularly put into fleets on CCP for an event like this, for kind of a special event? Obviously, it's going to be a rough estimate, but we want to get a general idea. Ideally, we want to get this active enough that it's actually starting to stress the CCP nodes, so we can do some load testing as well. And what time zones are you most active in? Then we can place you nearer to people in your own time zones. You can have fights. We want to say a really big thank you to everyone who's here, to everyone who's posting at home, everyone who's blogging, everyone who's making podcasts, everyone who's writing articles on news sites, everyone who's involved in this discussion. We are reading and listening to everything we can. I'm listening to like every podcast that has the word SOV in it. We're reading everything we can. We want to get as much information from you guys about what it is you like about the system, what you don't like, the reasons behind those. Keep discussing, keep debating. This is something that is really core to how we make EVE and how EVE has been so successful for 12 years. It really is a partnership between players and devs. I know that sounds like something that would be like marketing speak, but I've been a part of this on both sides, from the player side and the dev side, and I do truly believe that that's what makes EVE great. If that wasn't something that I was passionate about, then I wouldn't have moved to this very, very barren, windy rock in the middle of nowhere. We want to have a bit of time for questions. Let's see what time it is. Probably not a ton of time, because we're going to need to get you guys ready for your next presentation and bring out some table stuff. Actually, Probably not anytime. But what we do have is the actual roundtables. So there's 2 of them, one today at 3 o'clock, roundtable room 3, one tomorrow at 11, roundtable room 4. Thank you guys. Make sure to show up to those. Catch us at the pub crawl, at the bar, at the charity dinner. Talk our ear off. That's what we're here for. And together we're going to make a really great system that you guys can have a lot of fun with. Thanks, everyone. And so in this room next will be the game design panel. So look forward to that.